Welcome to In Pursuit of Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. I'm starting you off here on my Twitter page. If you are a Twitter user and you are feeling so inclined, please won't you join me at IPOT1776. That is IPOT1776. I do tend to post on here throughout the day, and on the days that I don't make videos, you may still find some content coming from me here. Also, if you are a Gab user, you can find me over here at In Pursuit of Truth. That's In Pursuit of Truth, and you'll see the big red question mark, and you'll be able to find me there. All right. Look, so this news cycle is coming so fast. It's like that D5 avalanche that we have been talking about. It is increasingly difficult to stay ahead of this news cycle because there's so much happening. But I do want to talk about this today, if I may. This is a tweet from President Trump, 8:18 p.m., May 31st. We'll be giving a full pardon to Dinesh D'Souza today. He was treated very unfairly by our government. All right, boys and girls, put on your pardon pants because there's a possibility that the president is going to pardon some people. From FoxNews.com, Trump says he's considering pardoning Martha Stewart, Rod Blagojevich. President Trump said Thursday he was considering pardoning or commuting the sentences of Martha Stewart and former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich following his announcement earlier in the day of a full pardon for conservative filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza. The president's comments came during a gaggle with reporters on Air Force One en route to Houston, Texas. Trump called the former governor's sentence on corruption charges really unfair and added that plenty of other politicians could have said a lot worse. The president said that Blagojevich said something dumb, but that's lots of politicians do. I'll tell you another one. There's another one that I'm thinking about. Rod Blagojevich, 18 years in jail for being stupid and saying things that every other politician, you know that many other politicians say, Trump told reporters. And if you look at what he said something to the effect like, what do I get? Stupid thing to say. The former Democratic governor, who was a contestant on Trump's Celebrity Apprentice in 2010, began his 14-year prison sentence in 2012 after being convicted of corruption. Blagojevich's scheduled release date is in 2024. Blagojevich was governor of Illinois from 2003 to through 2009 when he was impeached and convicted on corruption charges over allegations he took bribes for political appointments, including to the open U.S. Senate seat of former President Barack Obama. Trump suggested he was more interested in curtailing his sentence than a full pardon. I am seriously thinking about not pardoning, but I am seriously thinking of a curtailment of Blagojevich, Trump said. The president also said he would consider pardoning Stewart, saying she used to be one of my biggest fans. And there are others. I think to a certain extent Martha Stewart was harshly and unfairly treated, and she used to be my biggest fan in the world before I became a politician, Trump said. But that's okay, I don't view it that way. Stewart was convicted in 2004 of obstructing justice and lying to the government as part of an insider trading case. At the time, former FBI Director James Comey was the federal prosecutor who charged Stewart. The president's comments come after an early morning tweet announcing that he would pardon D'Souza. We'll be giving a full pardon to Dinesh D'Souza today. He was treated very unfairly by our government, the president tweeted Thursday morning. D'Souza told Fox News he received a call from the president on Wednesday to notify him of the decision. I am thrilled and relieved and elated as an immigrant in America. My American dream has been under something of a cloud, so I'm very relieved to have that cloud lifted, D'Souza told Fox News on Thursday. D'Souza said he and Trump spoke for about 10 minutes, calling it a very pleasant and exciting call. President Trump told me he felt I had been treated very unfairly, and he felt that I was an important voice for America, D'Souza said. He wanted to clean my record and adhere to continue doing what I'm doing. The conservative filmmaker had pleaded guilty in 2014 for donating $20,000 to New York politician Wendy Long, allegedly going over the contribution limit by directing other donors to give to her. He was sentenced to 5 years of probation and 8 months in a halfway house and paid $30,000 fine. This is an intriguing move, and I got to be honest with you, I'm not 100% sure that I understand it, but I want to talk about these three characters today. Let's start off talking about Dinesh D'Souza, who's getting pardoned, and I want to take you back to Politico back in 2014. D'Souza enters guilty plea. Conservative author and filmmaker Dinesh D'Souza entered a guilty plea Tuesday to a charge that he used straw donors to make $20,000 in illegal contributions to Republican Senate candidate Wendy Long in 2012, officials said. The unexpected guilty plea came on the same day the trial for a strident critic of President Barack Obama was set to open in U.S. District Court in Manhattan. The single felony count D'Souza admitted guilt on carries a maximum prison sentence of 2 years, but the plea agreement D'Souza's lawyers reached with the government says sentencing guidelines applicable to the case call for a sentence of 10 to 16 months. Judges are not required to sentence defendants in accordance with the guidelines, but usually do. Both sides reserve their rights to argue for a sentence outside that range, and D'Souza's lawyer Benjamin Brafman, who incidentally is representing Harvey Weinstein, indicated he plans to ask Judge Richard Berman not to send D'Souza to prison. The plea deal calls for dismissal of a second charge D'Souza faced if he went to trial, causing Long to file a false report with the Federal Election Commission. That carried a potential sentence of up to 5 years behind bars. We are hopeful that Judge Berman will recognize Mr. D'Souza to be a fundamentally honorable man who should not be in prison for what was an isolated instance of wrongdoing in an otherwise productive and responsible life, Brafman said in a statement emailed to reporters. So, you guys remember this. This was a big deal. This was a conservative filmmaker, and he got a lot of flack for this film, 2016 Obama's America. And it says here, D'Souza also worked as a White House policy advisor under President Ronald Reagan. Dinesh D'Souza, who did a very big movie criticizing the president, is now being prosecuted by this administration, Senator Ted Cruz of Texas said in a portion of a January CBS interview edited out by the network, but posted online by Cruz's office. Can you image the reaction if the Bush administration had gone and prosecuted Michael Moore and Alec Baldwin and Sean Penn? Cruz and 3 other senators, Mike Lee of Utah, Chuck Grassley of Iowa, and Jeff Sessions of Alabama, also sent FBI Director James Comey a letter in February seeking more information about prosecutors' claims that D'Souza's case arose from a routine FBI review of FEC filings, which show refunds and reallocations of contributions to Long's unsuccessful bid. D'Souza moved unsuccessfully to challenge the charges on the basis of selective prosecution, but U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara said in a statement Tuesday that the case was handled without any political bias. We will investigate and prosecute violations of federal law, particularly those that undermine the integrity of the democratic electoral process, without regarding to the defendant's political persuasion or party affiliation. That is what we did in this case and what we will continue to do, Bharara said. At the court hearing Tuesday, D'Souza admitted he knew what he did was against the law. I knew that causing a campaign contribution to be made in the name of another was wrong and something the law forbids, D'Souza said, according to Newsday. I deeply regret my conduct. Brafman added in his press statement, Mr. D'Souza agreed to accept responsibility for having urged 2 close associates to make contributions of $10,000 each to unsuccessful 2012 Senate campaign of Wendy Long and then reimbursing them for their contributions. Given the technical nature of the charge, there was no viable defense. Berman set D'Souza's sentencing up for September 23rd. In addition to capping the amount of jail time D'Souza could face, the plea deal could help minimize attention to embarrassing aspects of the case that go beyond the illegality, the author admitted Tuesday. Evidence disclosed in pretrial motions indicated that 2 of the illegal donations were routed through D'Souza's mistress, Denise Joseph, and her husband, Luis Joseph. In 2012, D'Souza resigned from his post as president of Evangelicals King's College in New York following reports that he attended a South Carolina conference on Christian values accompanied by Denise Joseph and introduced her as his fiancée, despite the fact that he was still married at the time to another woman. He said later in a statement he'd been separated from his wife for 2 years and had no idea that it is considered wrong in Christian circles to be engaged prior to being divorced, even though in a state of separation and in divorce proceedings. So there is D'Souza's story. And clearly he was in the wrong for encouraging these people to make these donations. But at the same time, the Obama administration went after him really, really hard. He became kind of public enemy number 1 after this film. And we're going to talk a little bit about the motivation behind that, but I just wanted to give you some background to the story. Let's move on. Now, I want to move on to Rob Blagojevich real quick. And this is an opinion piece off of the Washington Examiner from today, and I find this really, really insightful. Let's read a little bit about this. When news broke that the FBI had raided the office and hotel room of President Trump's longtime personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, it sent shockwaves throughout the country. Republicans, Democrats, lawyers, and legal scholars immediately began to question how such an act could ever be justified. Right after the news broke, Fox News host Laura Ingraham, who has a law degree from the University of Virginia, tweeted, if by raiding the office of Donald Trump's attorney, the FBI violated Trump's attorney-client privilege, this is about to get really ugly. And she's right. But how did we get to this level of abuse of powers? Look no further than these three characters or creatures of the swamp: Robert Mueller, James Comey, and Patrick Fitzgerald. Mueller, the former FBI director and now special counsel, is the one that recommended the unprecedented and highly controversial raid of Cohen's office and hotel room in coordination with the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of New York, and the investigation into collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia, which Mueller oversees, a total witch hunt filled with lies and fake news. Comey, the former FBI director and now author, is busy promoting his new book on the speaking circuit, but we all remember Comey as the guy who recommended against filing criminal charges targeting Hillary Clinton for her handling of classified information while Secretary of State, as well as the guy who shared a highly sensitive memo relating to conversations Comey had as FBI director with Trump, with a friend who promptly leaked it to the press. Comey hoped the leak would lead to the appointment of a special counsel to investigate collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia. And Fitzgerald? He's Comey's best friend and the former U.S. attorney in Illinois. Comey and Fitzgerald became fast friends when they both worked in the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, and during a congressional hearing, Comey referred to Fitzgerald as one of the finest federal prosecutors there is, if not ever. And just recently, Comey hired Fitzgerald to join his legal team. So why does all this matter? In 2008, then FBI Director Mueller authorized a totally unnecessary and ruthless pre-dawn raid on then Governor Rod Blagojevich of Illinois. Blagojevich, a Democrat, was arrested in front of his two terrified young daughters. He supposedly conspired pay-to-play schemes to fill then President Barack Obama's vacant Senate seat. The arrest and subsequent trial made national headlines. The fame-hungry federal prosecutor in the case, none other than Comey's best friend, Fitzgerald. The Blagojevich case is one that should make every political candidate and elected official very nervous. At its very core, the question remains, what constitutes illegal political fundraising? So long as the answer remains fuzzy, both candidates for office and elected officials better watch out. A routine political fundraising call could send you to prison for 14 years. Political fundraising is a necessary evil in politics. Everybody fundraises. Professional fundraisers earn lots of money, and politicians raise lots of money. You can't win or retain your elected position without fundraising, and that's why it is problematic for anyone in politics that the U.S. Supreme Court recently rejected hearing Blagojevich's appeal. That's a shame, because we need the Supreme Court's guidance dearly. Without it, every candidate and public official is at risk of imprisonment. As Blagojevich lawyers wrote in their appeal to the Supreme Court in McCormick v. United States, it was decided that extortion based on soliciting campaign contributions requires a quid pro quo in the explicit promise or undertaking by a public official. In Evans v. United States, the Supreme Court blurred the relative clarity of the McCormick ruling, and because of these two rulings, there is confusion at the lower courts. Former Governor Bob McDonnell of Virginia, once a rising star in the Republican Party, was found guilty of accepting more than $130,000 in gifts from a donor friend who needed the governor's office and influence to help save his struggling company. The gifts made national headlines, with pictures of McDonnell driving around in a Ferrari, a $20,000 shopping spree in New York, and a $6,000 Rolex. In the end, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned his conviction. Time spent in prison, 0 days. Senator Bob Menendez of New Jersey accepted donations and gifts from his wealthy friend Solomon Melgen in exchange for political influence. Melgen provided Menendez with trips on private jets, hotel rooms, and contributed nearly $75,000 to his political campaign. In the end, his trial concluded with a hung jury, and the Justice Department then filed to dismiss all remaining charges. And last Thursday, the Senate Ethics Committee severely admonished the senator for accepting gifts over a 6-year period. Time spent in prison, 0 days. Unlike the cases of McDonnell and Menendez, Blagojevich never accepted lavish gifts, flew on private jets, took luxurious vacations, drove around in a Ferrari, or wore Rolexes in exchange for his political influence, and yet he is serving 14 years in prison as a first-time offender. Blagojevich is the victim of overzealous prosecutors and law enforcement officials who are more obsessed with their own personal fame than they are with the facts. These pre-dawn raids on government officials and friends of government officials must end. This type of behavior is consistent consistent with what we'd see thugs do, and it's both aggressive and unnecessary. While Blagojevich sits in prison for 14 years as his family suffers at home because of his absence, people like Clinton, Menendez, and McDonnell are out enjoying the good life. The Clinton Foundation was clearly engaged in pay-to-play politics while she was Secretary of State, yet nothing has happened with regards to an investigation or even an inquiry into their fundraising activities. A total disgrace. Mueller, Comey, and Fitzgerald must be denied their swamp water, and Trump should make a big splash by sending Blagojevich back home. So, interesting opinion piece, and keep in mind that is an opinion piece off the Examiner, not necessarily my own, but the Blagojevich story is an interesting one for sure. And his wife Patty was on Fox News today, and I've queued you up a little bit of this video, and I would like you to hear just a little bit about what Patty has to say.
And you wonder why the president has become interested in this case now. And you think back to your husband being hauled out of your house in handcuffs, the involvement of Mueller and Comey in this case as well. Do you think that he's sensitive to this situation because of what he's going through?
I see that. I see that these same people that did this to my family, these same people that secretly taped us and twisted the facts and perverted the law that ended up my husband in jail. These same people are trying to do the same thing that they did to my husband, just on a much larger scale. They were emboldened. They took down a governor, and now they've got their sights much higher.
I mean, we played the recording that was so famous and heard. I'm sure you've heard it more than you want to hear it. People listen to that and they say, look, he was trying to sell the Senate seat. President Obama was elected and he had a seat as governor that he could appoint to whoever he wanted. And he says, I'm not going to give this thing away. I want something for it. And they say, his critics, that that's pretty clear. And the judge seemed to agree when he passed up on the opportunity to let him go in 2016.
Well, I'm really glad you asked me about that, because the interesting thing is that there were probably about 70 different audio tapes that we wanted to play at trial, but that were suppressed by the government. And if you heard exactly what he wanted for it, it would be a totally different story. I mean, all these conversations my husband had with his staff about wanting to get a roads bill passed in Illinois to put more people to work, or more health care for families in Illinois, all these things that he had lined up that he'd wanted for the Senate seat, nobody ever heard. And so it is kind of frustrating when people hear that. This whole selling of the Senate seat, those charges were thrown out by the appellate court over 5 years ago. That centerpiece of their case was dismissed as political log rolling. I'll make your appointment if you appoint me to this. Yeah. That was deemed perfectly legal politics.
I listened to a lot of those tapes today, and I will say that a lot of the things that you mentioned were absolutely mentioned in those tapes. In terms of the punishment fitting the crime, I think that's one of the biggest issues here. Your husband got 14 years for this. What about fair sentencing? Is that a claim that you tried to make with the judge the last time around in 2016? And why was there no open ear for that, do you think?
Right. I think that, certainly my husband's serving more time than any other governor that's ever served, but he's also serving more time than any other politician for charges that have to do with simply fundraising. You have to remember there was no kickbacks to us, no fancy cars or trips, or no misusing of our campaign funds, no personal enrichment of any kind. This was simply campaign contributions for his campaign fund. And so it is stark how unjust the sentence is, given especially that nothing ever happened. These were all attempts. Nothing was ever even concluded. There were no contributions made or anything like that. They had to step in and stop my husband before anything happened.
The judge and the jury, the judge basically told the jury that they had to look at that attempt as basically as a done deal, and it seemed like that was what the jury was convinced to do in the case. I hope you'll come back and talk to us, and we're going to follow this up.
So you heard it from the wife of Rod Blagojevich. Now, Blagojevich, look, he sold the seat to the Senate seat of President Barack Obama, and that ended up going to Roland Burris. But, clearly there was some wrongdoing here, and the audio that the lady was talking about had to do with a phone call recording of Blagojevich saying that he wasn't going to just give this up for nothing. And look, it could have been taken out of context, or clearly there was enough there that Blagojevich, spent some time. And now it looks like Trump is talking about commuting this sentence or maybe pardoning altogether. Now, I tend to think pardoning is going to be unlikely. Look, you don't sell Senate seats. And I think that's a bigger discussion that we could also have too about this being business as usual in Washington. I think that's a big reason why we're here in the first place, is that none of that should be okay. But if what Patty is saying is true, and there's more audio that was taken out of context, this story may take on some different meaning. So I'm really curious to see what you guys think about this. But I do think that there's some strategy here. And before we get into that, I want to just back you up again to Dinesh D'Souza. He was very active on Twitter today, and I want to read you a couple of his tweets, starting from here. Obama and his stooges tried to extinguish my American dream and destroy my faith in America. Thank you, Donald Trump, for fully restoring both. My heartfelt thanks to those who prayed for me, supported me, and reached out on social media to President Trump to pardon me. Barrara and his goons bludgeoned me into the plea by threatening to add a second redundant charge carrying a prison term of 5 years. Karma is a bitch department. At Preet Bharara wanted to destroy a fellow Indian American to advance his career. Then he got fired and I got pardoned. And interestingly enough, I think is probably his most recent tweet here, is what he says. Exclusive, be the very first to know about my new movie due out this summer in time for the midterm elections. The announcement is coming soon. Don't miss out on this shocking new film. So, does D'Souza have something shocking that's going to come out just in time for the midterm elections? We will see. Now, look, these guys were in the wrong. There was some wrongdoing. I definitely don't want to absolve either one of these gentlemen for what happened. But it seems to me that D'Souza might have been caught in a very, very difficult position. And because of his stance on the movie, the Obama administration clearly did not want to see this man have his voice be heard. Now, as far as Blagojevich goes, it remains to be seen. Like I said, I'm not so sure that he's going to get a pardon, but I do think a commuted sentence could make sense. And if so, will we find some more information out? And will we be able to get to hear some of this audio that was never allowed? Would that put his story in different perspective? That remains to be seen. And then, of course, now we've got Martha Stewart. Now, look, Martha Stewart, I don't want to go way into her because honestly, I think what she did was just wrong. It was insider trading. She got busted and she was a buddy of Trump's. And now she's not. She's a registered Democrat, from what I understand. She's a Democrat. Another one of those typical stories that we've seen in Hollywood. Everybody was Trump's buddy until he was running for president. And of course, now we start to see where everybody stands on these issues because of that. Now, why I think this is all very interesting and fortuitous timing for the three of these people, starting with D'Souza, who actually got the pardon. I think that is President Trump's sort of jab at the far left, the deep state, and also kind of to let Mueller know that, hey, I still have pardon power just in case, that needs to be done for one General Flynn. But I think this is a little needle, a little thorn in their side, if you will, because this is going to drive them nuts. They didn't like this guy. And if they go crying too much about him, then they also have to be able to cry about Martha Stewart, who is kind of their girl, even though she was a buddy of Trump's, but that's a complicated story. But you see what I'm saying? It's going to basically highlight their hypocrisy if they go barking about this too much, because Trump can say, well, come on, I let your girl go too. I don't really see any political motivation other than that for Martha Stewart. Martha Stewart, look, she got busted. She had to serve time. I don't see the point of pardoning something like that. I can't understand that other than this being just a little bit of political jockeying, if you will. And then, of course, you've got Blagojevich. And now Blagojevich did seem to do something wrong, but maybe there's some truth to this fact of the matter that we're not seeing the whole story. We'll have to wait to find out. But I can only think that Blagojevich, in his position, considering he was the one selling Barack Obama's seat, must know something. And that's why I'm thinking probably not a full pardon, but more likely a commuted sentence, maybe in exchange for some information. I'm not really sure, but I can't help but think he might know something, considering the way that the screws were put to him. And that, in a way, is in a sense true with D'Souza as well. What was Barrera pressuring him for? What was the whole point? So as we see this play out, it'll be interesting to see how the far left sort of decries this. Are they going to be up in arms over this? And if so, will they also have to throw Martha Stewart under the bus with that as well? Let me know what you guys think below. That's just kind of what my thoughts on the matter. Googly under fire for listing Nazism as the ideology of the California Republican Party. This is from Fox News. Google came under fire on Thursday after an error in its knowledge panel listed Nazism as the ideology of the California Republican Party. The error, which was first spotted by political strategist Eric Wilson, showed Nazism alongside other ideologies such as conservatism, market liberalism, fiscal conservatism, and green conservatism. The error showed up in Google's knowledge panel, which pulls information from various sources from across the web, including Wikipedia. Google should apologize for labeling Republicans Nazis, Wilson tweeted. Wilson is the founder of Learn, Test, Optimize, which describes itself as a community platform for professionals working at the intersection of marketing, technology, and politics. The error has since been fixed, but not before House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy of California slammed the company over the error. Sadly, this is just the latest incident in a disturbing trend to slander conservatives, McCarthy wrote. These damaging actions must be held to account. #StopTheBias. The news was first reported by Vice News. When reached for comment, a Google spokesperson told Fox News the error was likely the result of vandalism on one of its sources. This was not the result of any manual change by anyone at Google. We don't bias our search results towards any political party. Sometimes people vandalize public information sources like Wikipedia, which can impact the information that appears in the search, the spokesman said via email. The spokesperson continued, "We have systems in place that catch vandalism before it impacts search results, but occasionally errors get through. And that's what happened here. This would have been fixed systematically once we processed the removal from Wikipedia. But when we noticed the vandalism, we worked quickly to accelerate this process to remove the erroneous information." Okay, so what I'm hearing is, Google has no desire to fix this kind of stuff. And as we all know, Wikipedia is a mess. Anybody can go ahead and I've showed you this in my own videos, go ahead and edit Wikipedia. Now, what happens is if you edit Wikipedia, now you will, of course, get like this little highlight search put on you. So I don't suggest you go in and do that, but you can. And look, we know Google's a mess. We know Facebook's a hot mess. We know Twitter's a mess. We know YouTube's a mess. This whole thing is a mess. And I suppose that the irony is that we're all fighting this information war on the same platforms. And I would love to know your thoughts below. As far as your preferred platforms, which ones do you like? Which ones do you like to use? Which search engines do you like to use? I use DuckDuckGo a lot, of course. But if you got some good ones, please let everybody know. Those are some good, helpful things that we can really pass around in this information war. Because let's face it, a lot of the other things we are not going to be able to. Everything else is kind of out of our hands. We can do things as far as at the polls. We can do things as far as where we spend our money and where we share our information. So, on that spirit, please let me know what you like to use, and maybe that would help some of these people who are also watching these videos who aren't sure and into where they can kind of enhance their searches. Okay, those are your headlines for today. A couple more thoughts before I leave you be. Our thoughts, well wishes, and prayers go out to our friends in Hawaii, where Kilauea is still raging on. Looks like it's getting even hotter. More homes have had to be evacuated. So please stay safe out there, and give us a comment down below. Let us know how things are going. And if you want to share any of your links about some of the information locally that you'd like to share with us, please let us know. And finally, I'm going to leave you with a question because I didn't get much time to cover him today. Trey Gowdy was just recently talking to Fox, and he was saying, look, the American people should be happy with how this investigation went. No wrongdoing, did it by the book, blah, 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 blah. Looks like a hot mess, and everybody's talking about it. So I want to know what you think. Is Trey Gowdy A, white hat, playing aloof, staying low, under the radar, About to walk on to a possible maybe judgeship, prosecutorial, something in the Justice Department like he hinted to? Or is Trey Gowdy B? Trickety Trey Gowdy, Svengali roadblock, a la Eric Schneiderman, who didn't pay attention to some of these documents that were crucial to the investigation. Let me know your comments and thoughts down below. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and or subscribe. And when all that stuff gets undone, do me a favor, do it again. Repetition builds character. And you and I, we got character. Me and you and I, we, us guys. All right, that's it for today. As always, stay focused, stay calm, stay cool, stay collected, stay out of trouble.